Now to the politics of the crisis in Syria. We are live at the White House as President Obama prepares to address the nation on taking military action against the Syrian regime. He is facing an uphill battle, not only from the American public, but from lawmakers as well, with Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell saying he would vote against the resolution authorizing military force. House Speaker John Boehner saying President Obama needs to make a stronger case tonight because Americans don't support the president's position. A new Fox poll backs that up, showing 68% of those surveyed say the U.S. should stay out of Syria because it's a civil war. Joining us now, Nina Easton, senior editor and Washington columnist for Fortune magazine and Fox News contributor. Jamie Weinstein is senior editor at the Daily Caller. Thank you both for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Nancy Pelosi just sent out a tweet. Jenna alerted us to it. I wanted to put it up on the screen for you. She said that the president should get all kinds of credit for his strong handling of the situation in Syria, and that's why, essentially, I'm paraphrasing her tweet here, that's why Bashar al-Assad has come forward with this offer to give his chemical weapons to the Russians. Jamie, what do you think about that?
His handling of Syria has been an absolute debacle. In terms of credibility with the Russians, I think you can make the case that the president is at his lowest point in credibility regarding strikes than he has been since August 2012 when he instituted the Red Line. He has a Secretary of State who's saying the attack is going to be unbelievably small, and you have a Congress which is on the verge of voting down his use of force. So if I'm Bashar al-Assad and the Russians and I'm looking at this, I don't see a great credibility in the use of force at this point. I'm seeing the least credibility since August 2012. At least then, he wasn't saying he's going to bring it to Congress. He was saying that he could strike at any moment if they use this. Now he's bringing it to Congress, and very likely, if things don't change, he could have that resolution voted down. That's not credibility.
Nina, the Secretary of State did say it would be an unbelievably small attack. The president then turned around and said the United States does not do pinpricks. So which is it?
They're trying to get on top of the situation, which they've let developments completely get ahead of them. This plea to Congress, this plea to the public tonight, as an uphill battle, as you point out, is going to sound very different than it would have after the developments of yesterday, these fast-paced developments where a seemingly offhand comment by the Secretary of State becomes an offer from the Russians, gets signed on to allegedly by the Syrians, and is suddenly White House policy. So what we're going to see in this speech tonight is trying to get the public on board with, yes, we need military on the table. We need to stand behind, we need to have the prospect of force, but let's give peace a chance. And it's all because of this, this time buy that the Russians have given him. The interesting thing to watch for tonight, though, is the president going to set yet another red line? Is there going to be a deadline? Is it going to be, we've heard a week, is it going to be 2 weeks? What's going to be the turning point, the certainty point where we're actually going to take force?
Larry Sabato told Jenna last hour that a presidential speech can sway a few percentage points of Americans. But when you look at the polling numbers, well, he has described it as a big lift, a heavy lift, and that's an understatement perhaps. Yeah. 60% of Americans disapprove of the job he's doing regarding his handling of the Syrian crisis. That's up by 20% since May. Right now, only 29% of Americans approve of the job he's doing. So, Jamie, I don't know, how does he try to convince them?
Well, he's getting in late on this. I mean, he's had his Secretary of State and a lot of other officials come out and try to make the case for Syria intervention. And he went off to Russia, went to play golf the day after he made the announcement. He hasn't really made the case in the forceful terms of a presidential address. So he's already coming in late, where a lot of this has already been debated and decided by the American people. Now, I think he probably can sway a lot of some of those people who rabidly supported him and trust him, and he has a well of trust with. But I think a lot of the public has already decided that this is not in America's interest. They don't understand what we're doing there. I think the best hope he could do is kind of try to lay out clearly what the goal of this action would be, how we would accomplish that, because there's been a lot of conflicting message between what the administration is saying on one hand from the White House and then what Secretary Kerry says off the cuff in front of Congress.
Right, and does anybody, Nina, think that this Russian proposal might just be a gigantic ruse to stall and buy time and eventually collapse? I mean, that kind of thing has happened in the Middle East many times before.
Yes, of course, history suggests we should have a lot of skepticism about this. However, the Russian government wants two things. I think they want Assad to stay in power. Obviously, they want their client in the Middle East safely in power and ensconced
which
in power.
our president has said he doesn't want. He said Assad has to go.
Right, and so he doesn't want a military strike that could potentially threaten that. The Russian government doesn't want that. The other thing that they do have concern about is chemical weapons falling into the hands of terrorists. Again, if things got worse there, so there is some, it's a small degree, and at least the White House is saying we take this with a great deal of skepticism. But how long are you going to let them buy time like this? Are you going to set a deadline? Are you going to set a red line again? How long are you going to let this go?
Well, we've already heard.
I agree with Nina, but from one perspective, this has already been resolved because the Russians have this proposal to get chemical weapons under international control. The Syrian regime, Bashar al-Assad, says he doesn't have chemical weapons, so mission accomplished. They're already under international control because they don't have any weapons.
Right, and the president is already taking a bit of a victory lap at the White House by saying that this never would have happened if he hadn't been credible in his threat to use force. So we'll see what else he has to say tonight and whether he can sway that 60% of the American people who don't like what he's doing with regard to Syria so far. All right, Nina Easton, Jamie Weinstein, thank you both.